As a student, you may ask yourself, why do I need to study hard? Here is a logical answer to that question. All successful students study hard. You want to be successful, therefore you study hard. In this video, we will dive deeper into categorical syllogism. This logical reasoning method helps us draw conclusions based on premises. We'll learn how to identify the different parts and evaluate their validity and create our own syllogisms. By the end of this tutorial, you'll be a master of logical reasoning, ready to tackle any argument, academic or otherwise. First, let's define categorical syllogism. What is categorical syllogism? It is an argument consisting of exactly 3 categorical propositions. The premises and conclusion of arguments are stated in propositions. Propositions that say something about how the members of one category are related to the members of another category. A proposition is a declarative statement with a definite truth value. While all propositions can be seen as sentences, not all sentences can be regarded as propositions. This is because not all sentences are declarative in the fact that a definite truth value can be attributed to them. In other words, a categorical proposition is deemed valid only if it is a declarative statement and the premises are sufficient to prove the conclusion is true. Now, there are 4 types of propositions that are used in syllogism. First is positive universal, which states that all are. Second is negative universal, which states that none are. Third is positive existential, which states that some are, and negative existential, which states that some are not. Since any categorical proposition asserts that either all or part of the class denoted by the subject term is included in or excluded from the class denoted by the predicate term, it implies that there are exactly 4 types of categorical proposition. Now let's proceed to the parts of a categorical proposition. A categorical proposition has 4 parts. A quantifier, which is a word or phrase that defines the amount or measurement of the subject, denoted as all, no, or some. A subject, which is the minor term of a syllogism or the first term in the propositions. A copula, which is a verb that connects the subject and predicate term denoted as are or are not, and a predicate, which is a major term of a syllogism or the second term in the proposition. Any standard form categorical proposition must follow the order stated below: quantity, subject class, copula, predicate class. Note, the subject may be distributed or undistributed. A categorical term is said to be distributed if the categorical proposition that contains it says something about all members of that categorical term. On the other hand, a categorical term is undistributed if the categorical proposition that contains it does not say something about all members of the categorical term. Remember, it is important to know what these parts are for, as they are very important in determining the validity of the syllogism, especially the subject, predicate, and quantifier. Next, let's define the structure of a categorical syllogism. 1. Major premise. A general statement that contains the major term, the predicate term of the conclusion, denoted as P. 2. Minor premise. A specific statement that contains the minor term, the subject term of the conclusion, denoted as S. 3. Conclusion. A logical deduction based on the premises that contains the middle term, the term that does not appear in the conclusion, denoted as M. Let's proceed to the examples in order to identify the structure for categorical syllogisms. Example 1. All mammals are creatures that have hair. All dogs are mammals. Therefore, all dogs are creatures that have hair. In this example, the major term or the predicate term of the conclusion is creatures that have hair. The minor term or the subject term of the conclusion is dogs, and the middle term or the term that does not appear in the conclusion is mammals. Example 2. All mammals are warm-blooded. All black dogs are mammals. All black dogs are warm-blooded. In the next example, the major term or the predicate term is warm-blooded. The minor term or subject is black dogs and the middle term is mammals. Example 3. Most Filipinos have black hair. Benzon is Filipino. Benzon has black hair. Moving on to the third example, the major term or predicate
term is black hair. The minor term or subject is Benzon and the middle term is Filipino or Filipinos. Example 4. Some birds can fly. A pigeon can fly. A pigeon is a bird. In the fourth example, the major term is some birds. The minor term is a pigeon and the middle term is fly. Example 5. Most plants photosynthesize. All trees are plants. All trees photosynthesize. Now, in the fifth and last example, the major term or the predicate term of the conclusion is photosynthesize. The minor term or the subject of the conclusion is all trees, and the middle term or the term that is not found in the conclusion is most plants. Note, always remember that the major premise contains the major term. After a categorical syllogism has been put into standard form, its validity or invalidity may be determined through the inspection of the form. The individual form of a syllogism consists of two factors, mood and figure. The mood of a categorical syllogism consists of the letter names of the propositions that make it up. The mood of every syllogism is represented by 3 letters in sequential order. The first letter names the type of categorical proposition that the major premise is. The second letter names the type that the minor premise is, while the third letter names the type of categorical proposition that the conclusion is. In other words, the mood of a syllogism will consist of 3 letters taken from A, E, I, and O propositions. Each of the letters identifies the kind of categorical proposition that the major premise, minor premise, and conclusion is. Positive universal states that all S are P. The mood is denoted by A. Negative universal states no S are P, and the mood is denoted by E. Positive existential states that some S are P, and the mood is denoted by I. And negative existential states that some S are not P, and the mood is denoted by O. Now, let's determine the mood of the examples we had earlier. Example 1. All mammals are creatures that have hair. All dogs are mammals. Therefore, all dogs are creatures that have hair. In this example, the major premise's mood is positive universal because it starts with all are. Hence, the mood is denoted as A. The minor premise's mood is also positive universal since it still starts with all are, so it's denoted by A. Lastly, the conclusion's mood is still positive universal because of the same reason as the previous premises and is also denoted by A. Therefore, the mood of the argument is AAA. Let's move on to example 2. All mammals are warm-blooded. All black dogs are mammals. All black dogs are warm-blooded. This example is still the same with the first example, since all premises begin with all are. Therefore, the mood of the argument is AAA. Example 3. Most Filipinos have black hair. Benzon is a Filipino. Benzon has black hair. With the third example, the mood of the major premise starts with most, so we can determine it is positive existential, denoted as I. The mood of the minor premise begins with all are, therefore it is positive universal, denoted as A. In the conclusion, it is still all are, therefore it is still positive universal, denoted as A. With this information, we can determine the mood of the argument is IAA. Example 4. Some birds can fly. A pigeon can fly. A pigeon is a bird. The mood of this argument is the same with the third example, with it going from some to all are and ending with all are, meaning the mood is still IAA. With the last example, example 5, most plants photosynthesize. All trees are plants. All trees photosynthesize. In the fifth and final example, the flow goes from some to all are and ending with all are, meaning the mood is the same with the third and fourth examples being IAA. Let's remember that if the major premise is below the minor premise, you must switch it because the major premise should always be above the minor premise in order for the mood to be correct. After finding the mood, we will proceed to the figure of a categorical syllogism. The figure of a categorical syllogism is a number that is determined by the position of the two middle terms. There are four possible positions for the middle terms. Thus, there are four possible figures which form the structure of the syllogism. Now, let's discuss the types of figures. Figure 1. The middle term is on the left in the first premise and on the right in the second premise. Example 1. All mammals are creatures that have hair. All dogs are mammals. Therefore, all dogs are creatures that have hair. The middle term for this argument is mammals. In the first premise, it appears on the left, but on the second premise, it appears on the right. Therefore, it belongs to figure 1. Example 2. All mammals are warm-blooded. All black dogs are mammals. All black dogs are warm-blooded. The middle term in this argument is mammals. It appears on the left in the first premise and on the right in the second premise, meaning it is a figure 1 argument. Example 3. Most Filipinos have black hair. Benzon is a Filipino. Benzon has black hair. In this argument, the middle term is Filipino or Filipinos. In the first premise, it appears on the left, and in the second premise, it appears on the right. Hence, it belongs to figure 1. Example 4. Some birds can fly. A pigeon is a bird. A pigeon can fly. The middle term for the fourth example is birds. It appears on the left in the first premise and on the right in the second premise. Therefore, it belongs to figure 1. The final example, example 5. Most plants photosynthesize. All trees are plants. All trees photosynthesize. In the final example, the middle term is plants. In the first premise, it appears on the left, and in the second premise, it appears on the right. Hence, it is a figure 1 argument. Now, for figure 2, the middle term is on the right in both premises. Example 1. All creatures that have hair are mammals. All dogs are mammals. All dogs are creatures that have hair. Moving on to figure 2, the middle term in the first example is mammals. It appears on the right in both the first and second premise, meaning it belongs to figure 2. In the second example, the middle term is also mammals. In the first premise, it appears on the right, and in the second premise, it is still on the right. Therefore, it is a figure 2 argument. Example 3. Some humans with black hair are Filipino. Benzon is a Filipino. Benzon has black hair. In this argument, the middle term is Filipino. It appears on the right in both arguments, hence it belongs to figure 2. Example 4. Most animals that can fly are birds. A pigeon is a bird. A pigeon can fly. Moving on to the fourth argument, the middle term is also bird or birds. In the first and second premise, it appears on the right, meaning it is a figure 2 argument. Example 5. Organisms that photosynthesize are plants. All trees are plants. All trees photosynthesize. In the fifth and final example for figure 2, the middle term is plants. It appears on the right in the first premise and remains on the right in the second premise. With that being said, we can confirm it belongs to figure 2. For figure 3, the middle term is on the left in both premises. Example 1. Most mammals are creatures that have hair. Some mammals are dogs. Most dogs are creatures that have hair. In this example, the middle term is mammals. It appears on the left in both premises, meaning it is a figure 3 argument. Example 2. All mammals are warm-blooded. Some mammals are black dogs. All black dogs are warm-blooded. With the second example, the middle term is mammals. In the first premise, it appears on the left, same with the second premise. Therefore, it belongs to figure 3. Example 3. Some Filipinos have black hair. A Filipino is named Benzon. Benzon has black hair. In the third example, the middle term is Filipino or Filipinos. It appears on the left in both premises, hence it is a figure 3 argument. Example 4. Most birds can fly. Some birds are pigeons. All pigeons can fly. With the second to the last example, the middle term is birds. It appears on the left in both premises, therefore it belongs to figure 3. Example 5. Most plants photosynthesize. Some plants are trees. All trees photosynthesize. In the final example, the middle term is plants. It appears on the left in the first premise and still on the left in the second premise. Hence, it is a figure 3 argument. With the last figure, figure 4, the middle term is on the right in the first premise and on the left in the second premise. Example 1. Most creatures that have hair are mammals. Some mammals are dogs. Most dogs are creatures that have hair. The middle term in this example is mammals. It appears on the right in the first premise and on the left in the second premise. Therefore, it belongs to figure 4. Example 2. All warm-blooded animals are mammals. Some mammals are black dogs. All black dogs are warm-blooded. The middle term is still mammals. It appears on the right in the first premise and on the left in the second premise. Therefore, it belongs to figure 4. Example 3. Some humans that have black hair are Filipinos. There is a Filipino named Benzon. Benzon has black hair. In this example, the middle term is Filipino or Filipinos. It appears on the right in the first premise and on the left in the second premise. We can determine it as figure 4. Example 4. Most animals that can fly are birds. Some birds are pigeons. All pigeons can fly. In this example, the middle term is birds. It appears on the right in the first premise and on the left in the second premise. Therefore, it is a figure 4 argument. The last example, example 5. All organisms that photosynthesize are plants. Some plants are trees. All trees photosynthesize. The middle term here is plants. It appears on the right in the first premise and on the left in the second premise. Hence, we can conclude it is a figure 4 argument. Using the table, we can visualize each of the 4 figures and how they work and what they look like. After finding the figure and the mood, we will proceed to determining its validity. A valid categorical syllogism must meet the following conditions. A. Each term appears exactly twice in exactly 2 claims. B. The middle term is distributed in at least 1 premise. C. Any term distributed in the conclusion must also be distributed in the premise. D. At least 1 premise must be affirmative. There are 256 forms of categorical syllogisms. 4 figures times 64 moods equals 256. But there are only 24 valid forms of categorical syllogisms. According to Aristotle's table of 24 valid syllogisms, there exist 15 unconditionally valid syllogisms and 9 conditionally valid arguments. The conditionally valid syllogisms are represented with an asterisk next to them. Now, you may be confused on what unconditionally valid and conditionally valid syllogisms mean. As we all know by now, a basic syllogism with 2 assumed true premises that lead directly to a conclusion is called a categorical syllogism. An unconditionally valid syllogism is one that is valid no matter what. It is valid by form alone, regardless of the content or truth of the premises. On the other hand, A conditionally valid syllogism is only valid if certain conditions are met. It depends on whether additional constraints or contextual factors are satisfied. Before we dig deeper, don't forget that when asked to rewrite a syllogism into its standard form and name its mood and figure, the procedure is to 1. Identify the conclusion. 2. Note the predicate term of the conclusion, which is the major term of the syllogism. 3. Identify the major premise. 4. Verify that the other premise is the minor premise. 5. Rewrite the argument in its standard form. Major premise stated first, minor premise followed by the conclusion. And last, name the mood and figure. Now that you are ready, let's dig deeper and understand it better. We will elaborate this with 5 examples. Example 1. Premise 1. All men are mortal. Premise 2. Socrates is a man. Conclusion. Socrates is not mortal. So, the mood is, for the first premise, all S are P denoted as A. For the second premise, still all S are P denoted as A. And conclusion, no S are P denoted as E. For the figure, the middle term is on the left in the first premise and on the right in the second premise. Hence, it is figure 1. Now that we have determined its mood and figure, let's now determine if it is a valid argument or not. Since its form is not found in the table of validity, we can conclude that this categorical syllogism is invalid. Let's move on to example 2. Premise 1. Some humans are not women. Premise 2. Some men are not women. Conclusion. Therefore, all men are humans. Now, let's determine its mood. In the first premise, it states some S are not P, which is denoted as O. In the second premise, it states some S are not P, which is still denoted as O. And in the conclusion, it states all S are P, denoted as A. The figure follows figure 2, wherein the middle term is on the right in both premises. Now that we have already determined its mood and figure, let us now determine if it is valid or not. Since its form is not found in the table of validity, we can conclude that this categorical syllogism is invalid. Example 3. All hammers are tools. All chisels are tools. Therefore, all chisels are hammers. In determining the mood, all premises state that all S are P, which is denoted by A. Therefore, it is AAA. For the figure, in both premises, the middle term appears on the right. Therefore, it belongs to figure 2. Now that we have determined its mood and figure, let's determine if it is valid or not. Since its form is not found in the table, we can conclude that this categorical syllogism is invalid. Example 4. All pets are furry beasts. All rabbits are pets. Therefore, all rabbits are furry beasts. Let's determine its mood. Each premise states that all S are P, which is denoted as A. Therefore, the mood for this categorical syllogism is AAA. For the figure, the middle term appears on the left in the first premise and on the right in the second premise. Therefore, it follows figure 1. Now that we have determined its mood and figure, let's identify if it is a valid argument or not. Since its form can be found in Aristotle's table of valid arguments, we can conclude that this categorical syllogism is valid, more specifically, unconditionally valid. Moving on with the last example. No women are humans. Some men are not women. Therefore, some men are humans. Now, let us determine its mood. In the first premise, it states that no S are P, which is denoted as E. In the second premise, it states that some S are not P, which is denoted as O. And in the conclusion, it states that some S are P, which is denoted as I. Therefore, the mood for this argument is EOI. And for the figure, in the first premise, the middle term appears on the left and on the right in the second premise. Therefore, it belongs to figure 1. Now that we have determined its mood and figure, Let's identify if it is valid or not. Since we cannot find this form in Aristotle's table of validity, we can conclude that this categorical syllogism is invalid. Before I end the discussion, let's have a quick review. Always remember to determine where the major term, minor term, and the middle term is. The major term is the predicate of the conclusion. The minor term is the subject of the conclusion, and the middle term is a term that is not found in the conclusion. After defining the structure, you must now find the mood and figure, so you should look for the positions of the middle term. Lastly, determine if the figure and mood corresponds to the standard table that determines its validity.
And that's a wrap. As we've explored, categorical syllogisms are the building blocks of formal logic. By mastering the structure and the rules, you can sharpen your critical thinking skills and become a more discerning thinker. Remember, logical reasoning is not just a mathematical exercise. It is a vital tool for navigating the complexities of everyday life. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and keep thinking logically.